Michelle Lay and Giselle Esteban were the best of friends all through high school, even attending college in the same city so that they could maintain their sisterly bond. However, their friendship starts to take a drastic turn when Giselle falls hopelessly in love and has a baby, while Michelle devotes herself to pursuing her career. And it is because of this drastic turn in their lives that this once close friendship is headed for murder. Hello and welcome to The Dark Side of Love. I'm your host, Bianca Sloan, author of suspense novels about the dark side of love. And this week I'm putting a spotlight on the case I'm calling A Friend to Die For. Michelle Lay was born in San Diego on October 12, 1984 to Vietnamese immigrants. Michelle and her younger brother Michael were raised in Rancho Penasquitos, a suburb of San Diego, part of a large extended family that included 15 cousins. Considered the heart of the family, a mother figure of sorts to her cousins, Michelle was known to be outgoing and friendly, a kind, fun-loving girl who was always on the go and loved spending time with her girlfriends. And her best girlfriend was Giselle Esteban. Like Michelle, Giselle was born in 1984 in Union City, California. She was of Filipino descent and also hailed from a large, close-knit family of immigrants, one focused on achieving the American dream. As a student at Mount Carmel High School in San Diego, Giselle was known to be studious and quiet, something of a loner. Michelle, ever the friendly girl, had noticed Giselle sitting alone in the cafeteria and befriended her. The two girls quickly became besties, forming a strong bond by doing things like going to the movies and just hanging out, having fun. As Michelle's cousin Christine Den told Snap, Michelle really took Giselle under her wing, saying, quote, "Michelle was a best friend to her. Sometimes she was her only friend. The truth is, Giselle had a troubled family life. She left home when she was 14 and as a result spent a lot of time with Michelle's family. Giselle herself noted that keeping calm and serene was not a trait that she came by easily, saying, quote, "The Esteban women share three things: a quick temper, stubbornness, and blaming." Michelle and Giselle graduated from high school in 2002 and headed north to San Francisco to attend college in the same city, both girls aspiring to become nurses. While Michelle excels at San Jose State, classes and homework take a back seat for Giselle, who's attending San Francisco State, because she's got other distractions, namely a fellow student by the name of Scott Marzigan. Giselle and Scott start dating, and she introduces Scott to her bestie, of course, and Michelle and Scott hit it off, becoming good friends. Seems ideal, right? Your BF and your BFF getting along. Scott and Giselle dated for 2 years, and in 2005, Giselle gave birth to Scott's daughter. However, the bloom starts to come off the rose for the couple, as they have an off-and-on relationship that would drag on for quite a few years. Finally, in 2008, they broke up for good. However, Scott and Michelle, who'd always gotten along, continue to be friendly. Giselle and Michelle, though, they drift apart. Michelle is busy with school and her social life, and after graduating from college, she enrolls full-time in the nursing program at Samuel Merritt University. She's also working part-time as an accountant. Giselle, meanwhile, who had dropped out of school to have her baby, which meant she had her own aspirations for a career in nursing on hold, went to work at a daycare center. So these two best friends, who once upon a time were joined at the hip, are going on wildly different paths in life. As Fraser Ritchie, police inspector with the Hayward Police Department, told Snap, quote, "Giselle was going in the wrong direction, where Michelle was going in the right direction." May 27, 2011, 6:55 p.m. Michelle is on the last night of a training session for her nursing program at Kaiser Permanente Medical Center in Hayward. Once she's done with the semester, she plans to head to Lake Tahoe with some girlfriends for a little R&R. For now, though, she needs to take a quick 15-minute break to grab some medication from her car, which is parked in the garage. The 15 minutes are up, but Michelle is not back. Michelle's classmates start calling her, and instead of picking up, she responds via text that she is ditching class to head to Reno for a few days, that she's been stressed out, and that she needs to relax. Well, this makes zero sense, for one, because Michelle is known to be incredibly conscientious, and this is a class that she needs to graduate. It's an accelerated program, very competitive. They don't just let any Joe Blow in there. So for her to say, I'm peacing out, it's kind of cuckoo clock. And also, she's supposed to be heading to Lake Tahoe with some girlfriends in a few days, so why would she say she's going to Reno? And also, she left her purse and her wallet with her driver's license behind, and if she's going to Reno, she's not getting very far. And also, an ex-boyfriend texted her a number that in theory Michelle would know even if she had deleted it out of her phone. I can attest to this. And Michelle texts him back and says, "Who's this?" So all of this is adding up to a very bizarre picture. Michelle's instructor is worried that something may have happened to her, and she heads to the parking garage to find her. She gets there just in time to see the brake lights of Michelle's white Honda as it peels out of the parking garage. She calls hospital security, and when they arrive, they see blood and signs of a struggle on the ground where Michelle's car was parked. As Henry Lee, reporter with the San Francisco Chronicle, tells Snap, quote, "Something terrible had happened inside that garage." Indeed, Michelle is in trouble. Except, a message finally does come in, a text message from Michelle that says, quote, "I'm not missing. My phone has been acting crazy. It deleted everything." She continues to say that she is just going to take some time away so she can take it easy. Nobody believes this, and 911 is called. So the first thing is to find Michelle's car, which just so happens to have a LoJack tracking device on it. Authorities activate it and find it the next morning at a condo complex about a half-mile from the parking garage. The car was unlocked, no broken windows, nothing amiss, except for all of the blood inside. There's also a vital clue. There's an ID badge from Michelle's school found inside the car, and it does not belong to Michelle. Authorities race to find this person. Maybe they saw something, they know something, or they're the person who did something. It turns out to be a dead end. The person who belonged to that badge had a rock-solid alibi. They were in Hawaii, on vacation. So now investigators reach out to Michelle's friends and family to learn if she had any enemies, anyone who would want to hurt her. And a surprising name pops up like a weed. Michelle's BFF, Giselle Esteban. When questioned, none of Michelle's friends or family can really say what happened between the two friends, but a wild, educated guess on my part, a guy has to be. Investigators pay Giselle a visit on March 29th. That's 2 days after Michelle disappeared, and she is unbothered. According to what Police Inspector Fraser Ritchie told Snap, Giselle's response when she's told that her friend is missing is, quote, "Isn't she out partying?" I mean, if this is your friend, wouldn't you say, "Oh my God, what happened?" But no, not Miss Giselle. So during the course of the conversation, she mentions that she happened to be at the hospital for an OB appointment because she was pregnant again. And she says that as she was leaving, she caught a glimpse of Michelle. Well, this was 7 o'clock at night, which seems kind of late for an OB appointment. And in fact, things overall just don't seem to be adding up with Giselle. So investigators bring her into the station for a formal interview. And this is where Giselle reveals her true feelings about her BFF, saying, quote, "I considered her my sister. I don't know who she is anymore." She goes on to say that she knew that Michelle and Scott, which is Giselle's ex-boyfriend, were sleeping together. I knew this had to be about a guy. So cops want to know more about where Giselle was the night that Michelle disappeared after this so-called OB appointment. But she's having trouble remembering. She claims that she has memory issues because she is supposed to be taking lithium, but because she's pregnant, she stopped taking it. So she can't recall what was who or where or when or anything, basically. There's not enough to hold her, so cops have to let her go. But not before they confiscate the shoes that she was wearing the night that Michelle disappeared. Investigators also decide to put her under surveillance because they believe that she had something to do with Michelle's disappearance and think maybe she can lead them to where Michelle is. Michelle's family plaster missing persons posters, billboards, and yellow ribbons all around town to draw attention to the case and hopefully bring in tips that will lead them to Michelle. They even reach out to Class Kids, founded by Mark Class, whose daughter Polly was kidnapped and murdered, for help with organizing searches and training volunteers. But it is not a volunteer organization that yields the biggest clue. It's Giselle herself. When she does something so bizarre, it leaves jaws dropping all over town. So Giselle called into a local TV station to declare that she had nothing to do with Michelle's disappearance. So the thing is that she was a person of interest, but she wasn't a suspect. Nobody in the media knew her name. She doesn't help herself by blatantly telling the station that she, quote, openly hates Michelle for once upon a time stealing her boyfriend in high school. Like, what is she doing? Nothing is making sense here. So at this point, investigators no longer consider Michelle to be a missing person, but a homicide victim. They tracked Michelle's cell phone, which was missing, and discovered that it was pinging off of towers that led to the hills on the outskirts of town. And when they pulled Giselle's phone, they see that it followed the exact same path on the night that Michelle vanished. Well, if Giselle wasn't a suspect before, she sure is one now. As Lieutenant Roger Keener at the Hayward Police Department said in Snapped, quote, Giselle was going to be our only suspect. Investigators start to interview employees at the medical center where Michelle disappeared from, and there was a staff member who not only remembered seeing Giselle on campus in the days before Michelle disappeared, they actually spoke to her. So I guess this employee worked in admissions or something, and it turns out that Giselle had come in saying that she was interested in the nursing program and could she speak to an advisor. The advisor wasn't in, but I guess was coming back, so Giselle said she would wait, and the employee stepped out for a moment. And when she came back, both Giselle and the employee's badge were gone. This is the same ID badge that was found in Michelle's car. Surveillance footage would later show Giselle walking around the building. She's going into classrooms, she's in offices, and she's in a lab coat, and she's got this ID. And she has a class roster of all things in her hand because she wanted to know when Michelle would be on campus. It's kind of crazy to me that someone could literally walk in off the street and find information like this just laying around like it was nothing. It's one of those things where if you wrote about it in a book, nobody would believe you. But I digress, because the point of departure, as my father would say, is that Giselle was stalking Michelle. So the surveillance footage coupled with the cell phone evidence, Giselle's DNA being found in Michelle's car, Michelle's blood on the bottom of Giselle's shoes, it is more than enough to arrest Giselle. And on September 7th, 2011, police do just that. According to what Police Inspector Fraser Ritchie told Snapped, Giselle knew the jig was up, saying, quote, no fight, no argument, no nothing. Just puts her hands behind her back. Despite there not being a body, police charged Giselle first-degree murder. And the burning question remains, where is Michelle? The answer would finally come on September 7th, 2011. Volunteer search parties who had been searching for Michelle since she disappeared in May decide to take another look in the hills outside of Hayward, hoping to find something. And a dog did indeed lead a volunteer to a makeshift grave in the Sunol Canyon, containing the remains of Michelle Lay. The volunteer who found Michelle was Carrie McGonigal. Her daughter, Amber Dubois, was murdered in February of 2010 by sex offender John Gardner III in San Diego when Amber was 14. As Eric Curry of the Hayward Daily Review told Snapped, quote, the body was pretty much bones. However, the white medical scrubs that Michelle was wearing when she vanished were intact. 2 days later, DNA would confirm that it was her. Michelle Lay was 26 years old. Giselle's trial began on October the 1st, 2012. Investigators believe Giselle knew when Michelle would be on campus, because she was stalking her, that she was waiting in the parking garage, ready to pounce. They believe that Michelle was killed with a knife. She blamed Michelle for the breakdown of her relationship with Scott and decided that she would make her friend pay for what she saw as her treachery. So remember that I said earlier that Giselle told investigators that she believed that her ex-boyfriend Scott and Michelle were sleeping together? Well, Scott, as it turns out, has 80% custody of their daughter, the daughter that he has with Giselle. And the two of them were in the midst of a custody case. Giselle was trying to get custody back or half custody, or I don't know, but they were in a fight, basically. As the Bay City News Service reported, according to Scott's testimony at the trial, he and Michelle had dated casually in the spring of 2003. So remember, trials 2012, Michelle disappeared in 2011. So that's a long time ago. But they had dated about a month, he said, and didn't work out, but they remained on good terms, good friends, and they saw each other once in a while. Giselle was the one that he had the more substantial relationship with because, again, remember, they have a child together. However, as Bay City News Service reported, quote, Giselle did not want him to have a friendly relationship with Michelle in any form, shape, or fashion. Scott denied that he and Michelle ever had a sexual relationship, not when they dated or at any other time in all the years that they had known each other. But Giselle refused to believe it, with Bay City News Service reporting that Giselle began to obsess about Michelle's presence in Scott's life, that she, quote, wanted to control Scott, wanted to prevent him from having any sort of contact at all with Michelle. And to show him that she meant business, Giselle would threaten Scott, warning him of the consequences of ignoring her wishes to stop seeing Michelle, saying, quote, that the punishment would be swift. As a result, 3 days before Michelle disappeared, Scott was granted a restraining order. CBS News reported that on the day the restraining order was granted, Giselle broke into his house and went into their daughter's room. And when his mom caught her and asked her what she was doing, Giselle said, quote, I'm messing with your son, before she ran away. To further show that she gave 0 Fs about a restraining order, Giselle also went to their daughter's school, which she wasn't supposed to do, and on another occasion actually tried to go into the girl's classroom. Scott was clear that he was worried that Giselle blowing off the restraining order made him afraid that she was, quote, increasingly unstable, further describing her, as Henry Lee noted in Snapped, as, quote, extremely erratic, very angry, very belligerent. As part of his evidence for why he needed a restraining order, Scott had started to record his conversations with Giselle, and they are chilling. She demands, quote, you will be honest with me regarding her. Otherwise, I will take her life and yours. You deserve to die for your lies, as does she, and you will if you do it again. This is your last and final warning. She threatened to take her own life if Scott didn't take her back, saying, you pushed me into insanity. She called Michelle a homewrecker and that Michelle has dug her own grave. As Eric Curry of the Hayward Daily Review noted to Snapped about the recordings, quote, so you clearly saw that this was someone that was very disturbed. It didn't matter that Scott and Michelle repeatedly denied any kind of sexual relationship. As Lieutenant Roger Keener said in Snap, quote, she, meaning Giselle, wasn't going to hear reason from anybody, whether it came from Scott telling her that he has no relationship with Michelle, or Michelle saying, I don't even talk to Scott much anymore. None of that was going to matter. It was pretty clear, I think, that Giselle was just insanely jealous of Michelle, who frankly has her life really together while Giselle just doesn't. And for whatever reason, Michelle represents her failures to her. As Mark Klass observed and Snapped about Giselle, quote, she decided that all of her problems in her life were because of Michelle. Giselle's defense was that, yes, she killed Michelle, no getting around that, but that she'd snapped and killed Michelle in the heat of the moment. They say that because she was off her lithium, because she was pregnant, she was not in control of her emotions and should be convicted of manslaughter, not first-degree murder. I mean, the problem with that is all the premeditation. Sneaking into the nursing school to get Michelle's schedule, waiting for her in the garage, all the time she told Scott she was going to do something to Michelle. As Inspector Fraser Ritchie told Snap, quote, it was meticulous. She knew what she was going to do. Preach. It also came out during her trial that Giselle had meticulously researched for just the right method of killing Michelle. People magazine reported that an FBI computer expert testified that there were 300 searches with Michelle's name on her computer, and that she had researched topics like having a heart attack without leaving a trace, following someone without being caught, how to break locks, deadbolts, and doors, and highly toxic gases such as potassium chloride and carbon monoxide. That kind of makes it hard to say that this was in the heat of the moment, frankly. In the end, this defense just does not fly. And on October 29, 2012, Giselle was found guilty of first-degree murder and sentenced 25 years to life, with her first opportunity for parole coming in 2029. However, as the Bay City News Service reported, Giselle's distinct lack of remorse for her crimes spurred Alameda County Superior Court Judge John Rollison to warn her that she could have no parole if she wanted if she continued to act like she didn't care. Giselle gave birth to her second child, a little boy, in November of 2011. To date, the father of this child is unknown, and her parents are raising him. Scott, the guy who Giselle just could not let go of, has full custody of their daughter. Thank you so much for joining me for another episode of The Dark Side of Love. I'm your host, Bianca Sloan, and show your love for The Dark Side of Love by visiting thedarksideoflove.com for show notes and transcripts. While you're there, sign up for my newsletter to be notified about new episodes. You can also find a link to my Patreon page where you can access bonus material and other fun stuff. Learn more about my suspense novels about the dark side of love by visiting biancasloan.com. Thanks for hanging out with me, and join me next time for another tale of love gone wrong. I'll see you on the dark side.